Speaking truth to power takes many forms, and lately public participation has been an effective tool in keeping the government in check to deliver upon its promises and mandate. Spoken word has been a medium that is used to express different emotions, evoking thoughts and feelings that are both good and bad. National matters also take a precedence in the spoken word form, and creatives use it to articulate or decipher messages to the masses in a way that can be understood in current times. Tonight on Friday Live, we highlight the spoken word form through creatives who have used it to pass along critical messages in society and have spoken truth to power on national matters. And Friday Live begins now. And with me in studio is my colleague Gladys Midecha, and of course she'll be handling the sports news. And there's so much happening, Gladys, in the world of sport this weekend.
Yes, you are right, Remy. Of course, we're going to be talking about the biggest games that are going to be happening this weekend in Kenya, and tomorrow it's going to be Zamalek FC taking on Egyptian giants Zamalek. And then, of course, we have some news on the Wonder Diamond League. It's the final leg, and the winners are going to be crowned this weekend. And of course, last but not least, we are K24 TV, your home of football. So we're going to be telling you on what we have for you on Maskani ya Machampe this weekend.
And Gladys, you said you're a Liverpool fan, or?
No, I don't know why you bring this up right now. I'm a Manchester United fan. We saw bad things before the international break. I am telling you, it was heartbreak after everything wrong. And then, you know what? Tomorrow, Manchester United have another early kickoff. I don't know whether my heart can handle this. Let me just stick to local football for now.
You have my support. You have my support, Gladys. And with that mentioned, let's take a look at the highlights.
Why Adani? Why not the Kenyan government?
With PPP Act, it basically seeks to help economy on mega projects where the government may not be able to develop.
Senators oppose the proposed JKI takeover by Adani Airport Limited Holding as CS Davis Chirchir claims there is no existing signed agreement.
Mr. Gilbert Masengeri is sentenced to 6 months imprisonment. Mr. Masengeri is ordered to submit himself to the Commissioner General of Kenya Prisons to ensure that he is to be committed to a prison facility to commence serving sentence of the imprisonment imposed.
Acting Inspector General of Police Gilbert Masengeli is sentenced to 6 months in prison for contempt of court.
Nimeona shingo kuanzia hapa hivi wa kwanza na wa pili hapa hivi ndio mchanga imefika na watatu mchanga imempika hapa, lakini ameanguka huko. Kuangalia wengine mali walikuwa wako na watu ine au sikuwa na hata mtu mmoja.
4 confirmed dead after a mud wall sewer line collapsed in Nairobi's Shauri Moyo estate.
Mtoto wa kiume anarepiwa, baba kimtu, bwana kimtu, ndugu kimtu. Is it fair really? Ole just one ndugu yangu, please, mimi sitafanya kama wao walifanya, sisi hatutafanya kuwa eti tulipize, no. I just want serikali wafuate mkondo wao.
And Mombasa family cries for justice after their Gen Z son was abducted, sodomized and dumped at Mwakirunge dump site. Our sign language interpreter for tonight is Clement Muli. Now, controversy surrounding the proposal by, of course, India's Adani Airport Holdings to acquire land near the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport continues to stir debate. Transport Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir appeared before the Senate Roads and Transport Committee earlier today, where he was pressed on the details of the deal. This comes as the government faces, of course, growing scrutiny over its negotiations with the Adani Group to lease JKIA for 30 years. Our current affairs reporter Brian Amwai brings us the latest on this developing story.
It is a deal that has sparked heated debate in and outside of government circles. The proposal by Adani Airport Holdings to lease the JKIA for 30 years has drawn criticism from various quarters, including lawmakers who are questioning the transparency and details of the agreement.
It's okay. It would determine your judgment.
The proposed deal involves a request by Adani to develop an airport city near the JKIA grounds that will provide recreational and commercial services. According to Adani, such a development will enhance JKIA's reputation and offer services to both local and international travelers. On Friday, Transport Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir appeared before the Senate Roads and Transport Committee to clarify the government's position on the matter.
State whether the government plans to avail free land to the company known as Adani Commercial Limited to build a city-side development on public land, which may lead to land disputes in areas surrounding JKIA.
Honorable Chairman, the government is not offering any free land to Adani Airports Holding in the proposal. Adani included in its proposal a request for 30 acres of land at JKIA for real estate and commercial development. That's what we are calling the city side. This request has been excluded in the pending concession agreement, but will be handled separately under the KIA policy on concession and leases, like any other commercial operation, including approval by the head of public service, which is the current policy on leasing out government property.
However, questions have arisen over whether the government has agreed to this and why Adani was chosen for the project without competitive bidding. Senators pressed Chirchir to explain the tendering process and whether the agreement had moved forward.
Why Adani? Why not the Kenyan government?
Like we did indicate, with PPP Act, it basically seeks to help economy on mega projects where the government may not be able to develop.
Lastly, Chair, I want to know if there are any tax exemptions that Adani have requested for. Which taxes and for how long? They are proposing to be exempt, if at all.
Yes, in their proposal, they had indicated that they would want some tax holidays. But the position we've taken is that in the event of such an application, let it go through the due process. So no, they have never been accepted on that. We've now migrated it to the due process.
I wish you would use the language of the CS. Is that a deal breaker or not?
We never made it as a deal breaker. We migrated it, we ring-fenced it to the due process. So it is up to the government.
Chirchir confirmed that the deal with Adani has not yet reached the contracting stage. The Kenya Airports Authority is still reviewing the company's proposal and no binding agreement has been signed.
There is no common position on this matter. So, Waziri, is it in order as you walk out of this place to cancel and call off this fraud by Adani Group? That is on
meetings that took place in Dubai where this deal was being discussed. Mr. Jayesh Saini was sitting in that meeting with individuals from the Kenyan government, and I will state here that the person who met Mr. Jayesh Saini in Dubai was Honorable Murkomen when he was the minister in the position you are in.
I'm not aware.
Without having evidence that I can prove, but I think it's important that I make the statement that in that meeting that money exchanged hands. And Chair, later on, I believe as we continue, these details should be presented to this House.
It is a deal that has been termed as fraudulent, with the Senate calling on the ministry to cancel the deal for the nation's interest.
Agreed that all members.
Brian Amuai, K24.
Brian Amoy there with that story. Now, the High Court has sentenced Acting Inspector General Gilbert Masengeli to 6 months in prison after being found guilty of contempt of court. Justice Loris Mugambi ordered that he submits himself to Commissioner General of course, Prisons. Masengeli had been summoned by the court to explain the whereabouts of 3 activists arrested in Kitengela 4 weeks ago. Majibu Kitsao has that story.
It has not been made.
Today, all eyes were on the Acting Inspector General of Police Gilbert Masengeli and whether he will finally appear in court after refusing to do so 7 times. Even on the day of sentencing, the police boss was nowhere to be seen.
The deliberate defiance of court orders brings impunity, particularly when it is done by those entrusted with public power, as it is inconsistent with the purposes and the objects of the Constitution. In passing this sentence, I am conscious that it is directed to the highest ranked police officer in this country. He is still in office.
Delivering the ruling today, Justice Lawrence Mugambi of Milimani Law Court handed Masengeli 6 months in prison for contempt of court. Justice Mugambi directed that Masengeli avail himself to the Commissioner General of Prisons to ensure that he is committed to a prison facility to begin serving his sentence. Failure to submit himself, the court directed that CS for Interior Kithure Kindiki enforce the order.
Contemner, Mr. Gilbert Masengeli is sentenced to 6 months imprisonment. Mr. Masengeli is ordered to submit himself to the Commissioner General of Kenya Prisons to ensure that he is to be committed to a prison facility to commence serving sentence of the imprisonment imposed. In the event that he does not submit himself to the Commissioner General of Prison Service as ordered, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Interior must take all steps that are necessary and permissible in law to ensure Mr. Gilbert Masengeli is committed to prison to commence serving the sentence imposed on him.
Masengeli was required to appear in court to explain the whereabouts of 2 brothers, Jamil Longton and Aslam Longton, and Bob Njagi, an activist who were picked by people believed to be police officers in Kitengela 4 weeks ago.
The court nevertheless finds it desirable to impose this sentence as a coercive order as opposed to a punitive order. In that regard, Mr. Masengeli may avoid serving this sentence, and therefore, in that regard, the court shall suspend this sentence for 7 days only. The Acting Inspector General of Police can redeem himself and comply by availing himself before this court in person to answer to the issues he has been avoiding. In default, the sentence shall automatically become effective.
It is the irony of police force headed by a convict, the security docket being thrown in a crisis following the sentencing of its boss. Masengeli, however, has 7 days only to redeem himself by availing himself before the court in person to answer the issues he has been avoiding.
All those arrangements have already been made.
Majibu Kitsao for K24 TV, Nairobi.
Now, 4 bodies have been retrieved beneath the soil after mud walls of a sewer line they were constructing collapsed in Nairobi's Shauri Moyo. 3 others were rescued in the tragedy that occurred in the wee hours of the night. Police reported that among the 4 deceased, 3 adult males have yet to be identified. And of course, residents who gathered at the scene since morning offered varying accounts, with many insisting that more men may still be buried under the rubble. Of course, they also mentioned that they're accusing the contractors of not following procedures as they need to. And of course, we have Harriet Shamera with that story.
It was here at the unfinished sewer line construction in Nairobi's Shauri Moyo that men working in the wee hours of the night found themselves buried under collapsing mud walls. From the rubble, the lifeless bodies of 4 men were pulled out and taken to the city mortuary. 3 others, fortunate to survive, were rushed to Mama Lucy Hospital for treatment.
Watu waine wamekufa, 3 wametolewa na tingatinga.
Police have reported that of the 4 men who lost their lives, 3 remain unidentified. Evans Makori, a survivor of that tragic night, recalls how he narrowly escaped death by crawling out of the pit moments before the collapse, simply to take a smoke.
Kuangalia kana watu wanakimbia kukuja kwa hiyo shimo. Kuangalia mzuri kapata vumbi hiyo mchanga inaamuka. Ilikuwa saa 7 usiku. Sasa wakati nilikimbia kutoka hapo hivi ngapata wenye nilikuwa nimeacha ndani 3. Ndio nimeona shingo kuanzia hapa hivi wa kwanza na wa pili hapa hivi ndio mchanga imefika na wa 3 mchanga imempika hapa, lakini ameanguka huko. Kuangalia wengine mali walikuwa wako na watu 4 au sikuwa hata mtu mmoja.
He claims that despite putting themselves at risk, the contractor is yet to pay them. Angry residents gathered at the scene, blaming the contractors for their negligence. They accused them of cutting corners, forcing laborers to work under dangerous conditions without proper safety gear or adequate lighting deep into the night.
Sasa venye walianza kuchimba hiyo shimo, siku ya kwanza iliporomoka mchana hapo side moja, ikafunika kijana mwingine, akafunika mpaka hapa. Tukatoa hiyo kijana hapo kwa hiyo shimo. Sasa hawa watu walikuwa wanajua hapo inaporomoka. Shida ni walichimba kutoka hapa mpaka huko. Walichimba kutoka hapa mpaka huko, au wanaekezo mavitu zao. Hizi makalabata huko wanaeka. Juu angechimba kidogo waeke wafunike, ingekuwa at least safe.
So watu walikuwa wanafanya kazi wakimulika na sululu, hizi simu za sululu. Contractors anakuaga na pesa zake, si ni kweli? Kwani yeye hawezi afford maaskari hata kama 5 wakuja kusimamia hapa hata kama ni askari wawili?
The fear and frustration among the residents grew as they voiced their belief that more bodies still lay trapped beneath the soil.
Mpaka saa hii raia inasema wapotoe vijiko watoe wataki. Ni kama wanataka kuotoa tu usiku ende nao.
Ni vizuri ichimbue ituonyeshe kama hapo kuna watu wamebakia ama kama kuna watu wenye wayuko. Na hii kazi iko imepewa vijana ati sijui 4 5, ilikuwa almost vijana 15. So tunataka kujua hao wengine wameenda wapi kama wako hapo.
By midday, those frustrations had reached a boiling point. Desperate to take matters into their own hands, residents armed with their jembes resolved to dig, determined to recover the bodies they believed were still buried. Moments later, the situation escalated. Mobs blocked roads, setting tires alight in protest. But the chaos was short-lived. Police swiftly moved in, lobbing tear gas to disperse the crowd, clearing the stones that had barricaded the streets. Harriet Chimea, K24.
Well, quite the tragic story there, but we are taking a short break right here on Friday Live. We'll be back with more of this bulletin. Do stay with us.